Hello, welcome to the conversation here on News Central Television. This is the program where we bring you up to date with all the political happenings on the African continent. I am Gbenga Aborowa.
And I am Rita Omodia. It's so good to have you, Gbenga, back on the show.
Yes,
I hope you enjoyed your rest.
I really did want to go on that vacation, but I had to. I had to recharge my batteries, and it was a good one.
Well, you enjoyed yourself, right?
Yes, I did.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
It's good to have you back on the conversation. And today on the conversation, we'll be looking at developments in Mali, where 49 Ivorian soldiers have been detained. Mali's military government seized the men at Bamako airport, calling them mercenaries. Meanwhile, in East Africa, police in Uganda have arrested 25 people following demonstrations against high prices of food and fuel. I must say, Gbenga, that these are not just in Uganda or in East Africa. I think all over Africa.
Everywhere. And I'm surprised that there hasn't been a contagion effect in Nigeria. I did raise that question when talking to some people. But I guess it's because we're still very sensitive about demonstrations following the chaos that happened after the NSAS protest. We've seen protests in Belgium, in France, in England, in developed first world countries.
Did you see the protests in Sri Lanka also?
Yes, it was. I mean, that's the mother of all protests. You saw protesters in the prime minister, in the president's swimming pool, and all of that. But the question is it really Museveni's fault, and what can he do? Because different governments have different, like Tanzania, for example.
There have been calls for him to reduce tax, but he's saying rather, why not reduce your lifestyle of spending?
Yes, it did say if you can't eat bread, go eat cassava. That's a famous quote from him. So the people are hungry. The price of fuel has doubled since January, and salaries aren't going up. So
I know there's no justification for bad actions, but sometimes hunger can make you do the worst things that you never thought you would do.
I believe most constitutions does have a guarantee of peaceful protest. So it shouldn't be criminalized. They have legitimate grounds to protest.
Unless they went overboard, because there are also reports of the fact that they blocked the roads. So unless they went overboard, but I think the government needs to be more sensitive to their plights, because there's a trigger factor why they're doing such things.
Exactly. So we'll get into all that discussion in the course of our program. But we'll go on a quick break, and when we return, we'll introduce our guests to you and get on with the program.
Thanks for staying with us on the conversation. We begin with situations in Mali, where the Ivory Coast on Tuesday called on Mali to release 49 of its soldiers unjustly detained at Bamako airport and accused by officials there of being mercenaries. Mali on Monday had said the troops from the Ivory Coast were armed and mercenaries, having detained them on arrival. The Ivorian soldiers were arrested on Sunday at Mali's main international airport in the capital, Bamako. Ivory Coast National Security Council in a statement said they were the 8th rotation sent to Mali under the convention, and the mission order had been sent to both airport authorities and the junta before arrival. Now joining us live for this conversation, we have Adib Saani, is a security analyst and the executive director of a Jatikay Center for Human Security and Peacebuilding based in Accra, Ghana. Thank you so much for joining us on the conversation.
Pleasure is mine. Thank you.
All right, so let's begin with the accusations from the Malian military government. Now, the spokesman, Abdoulaye Mayiga, says the soldiers who arrived on Sunday were illegally on the national territory of Mali and in possession of weapons and ammunition. Now, this is what the Mali junta is saying, but the Ivory Coast spokesperson has actually derailed this report and said that this did not happen and that the soldiers did not come with the ammunition, but rather the second plane carried the ammunition. So in your own evaluation, how true are these allegations against the Ivory Coast government?
Well, currently it is a case of he said, she said, and we don't know who to believe. But when you look at the nuances of the matter, you would realize that what is happening goes beyond, like the Malians say, an attempt on the part of Ivory Coast to bring in mercenaries into Mali. Indeed, like you rightly mentioned, the Malians claim that the 49 soldiers were mercenaries. And according to Malian security sources, the UN didn't know about their coming. And they also got the opportunity to speak with these soldiers who had inconsistent narratives about why they were there in the first place. And on the other hand, the Ivorians claim that no, these soldiers are supposed to support MINUSMA. And MINUSMA, indeed, has also come out to say that they are not necessarily members of the peacekeeping mission, but they are providing support services. Okay, so yesterday, Assimi Goita was on the phone with the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres. We are yet to know what the outcome of the discussion is. And yesterday also, the Ivorian National Security Council met under the chairmanship of the President Alassane Ouattara. After that, a communique was issued in which they categorically called for an unconditional release of the 49 individuals involved. But as a security practitioner, based on my years of practice and experience, I've come to only one realization, that what is happening goes way beyond what the narrative is in the media.
Now, Adib, these soldiers are said to have been working for a German company contracted by the United Nations mission known as the Sahelian Aviation Services, and not mercenaries, as widely postulated by the Malian junta. My question to you is, how long have they been operating in Mali, and what exactly is their mission? Because if you have soldiers that are not expressly part of the United Nations mission in Mali, individual soldiers or a group of soldiers in another country without express permission from the government in Bamako, does that not make them mercenaries?
Well, there's no denying the fact that it is true when they say that if you live by the sword, you're afraid to die by the sword. We do know, considering the plethora of socio-economic and security deficits within the Malian society, the government is fragile. They are doing all they can to preserve the regime. And it is quite normal for, military juntas to be paranoid, and even dictators, like it happened in 2005 July, when 44 Ghanaians and some other West Africans were killed at the orders, according to the Truth and Reconciliation Committee, in which 5 individuals in July 2019 came out to say that they had orders from Yahya Jammeh to get rid, to, so to speak, kill the individuals because they were suspected of being mercenaries, only for us later to realize that they were indeed migrants and not mercenaries. So the Malian government is doing its best to preserve the regime. But there are some complexing issues to all that is happening, okay? We do know that mostly peacekeeping missions have support systems in place, okay? Most of it perhaps are provided by private contractors, all right? So it is not surprising to have support services in this form. However, the problem could be due to miscommunication, or perhaps, like I indicated, much more complex issues, such as Ivory Coast's ability to implement ECOWAS sanctions against Mali. At a point, we had some Ivorians protesting in Ivory Coast because they felt the pressure of the sanctions, because most of them rely on beef imports from Mali. Okay. Secondly, we know that Mali has taken a different direction, as Ivory Coast has also taken a different direction with respect to their allegiance, so to speak, to their former colonial masters, the French. Currently, The Malians don't want to work with the French again. They've asked them to leave. And the Russians, through the Wagner Group, have filled the vacuum. Okay? And Ivory Coast, working closely with France, is making the Malians feel uncomfortable because they know that in one way or another, the French would want to come after them. And they might want to use the Ivorians to come after them. All right. So all of these, I think, is what is adding up to, the rising tension.
Okay, Adib, still on this complexity issues. Now, the Mali's military government said some of their passports indicated non-military professions and that they gave different versions of their mandate. Now, do you believe that there was a bit of administrative glitch on the part of the Ivorian government? And how long has the Sahelian aviation services been going on?
Well, the services have been in place for some time now. I mean, since the deployment of MINUSMA in that area. It could be anything. I mean, it could be an administrative glitch. The Malians could have legitimate concerns, considering how deteriorated their relations with the French is now. It could also be that indeed they are there on legitimate grounds to provide services to the UN. Nobody is actually able to tell at this point in time, okay? But what I am praying happens next is for the two countries to find a way of, agreeing in principle on the matters that is currently on the table and easing the tension so it doesn't become a much more complicated diplomatic spat, especially at this time when the two countries and other West African countries are dealing with the issues of terrorism. We cannot afford to have yet another insecurity stemming from one country allegedly trying to send mercenaries into another country. So at this moment, it is safe to say that nobody really knows what the truth is. But as the days go by, based on the merit of the information that will be coming up, we will be able to make better judgments.
Thank you. Looking at this diplomatic standoff between the Malian government and Ivorians, they are both part of the economic community of West African states. Mali just recently had their suspension lifted. And I'm happy that you did mention the example of Gambia and how it treated Ghanaians back a few years ago. Looking at the way things is, we hope it doesn't degenerate into a situation where there will be loss of lives. And in your analysis, you also mentioned that the Malian government will be jittery of the Ivorian presence in their country, and they will see it as a sort of Trojan horse because they're not in exactly good terms with their former colonial masters, France. My question to you is this. Is there any efforts by ECOWAS to mediate this standoff and to fix the situation? And what will be the implications, the broader implications for security in the Sahel if this diplomatic standoff degenerates?
Okay, so as a security practitioner, I have always called for collaboration amongst various West African nations and dealing with the spate of terrorism in the sub-region. Indeed, the splintered, disorganized approach to dealing with terrorism is what is making us not make any significant progress over the years. For example, we have quite a number of different, groupings. We have the G5 Sahel Joint Task Force, Accra Initiative, Operation Bakan, and a whole host of others. So if we are able to come together, considering how pervasive terrorism has become in the subcontinent, that could help. So the challenge with this would be that it's likely to create mistrust and lack of confidence between the two countries, which I must say would affect their ability to come together to counter the threat of terrorism. We do know that whatever affects one country has the potential of spilling over into another, also considering how closely knit the West African society is. So obviously what is happening is quite disturbing. I have spoken with people on the ground, and I understand some backroom diplomacy is already ongoing at the behest of the current chairperson of ECOWAS, President Sissoko. I'm hoping that something meaningful would come out of it. I also understand that the UN Secretary General is also working assiduously round the clock to ensure that this doesn't complicate and lead to a much more serious diplomatic spat between the two countries, as it would affect undeniably, our fight against terrorism in the sub-region. And this also has the potential of emboldening terrorists, because once they know that the alliances that have been put together to fight them is already developing cracks, what do you expect? I mean, that plays to their advantage, and we wouldn't want that, particularly at this time when terrorists seem to be gaining a lot of foothold and are gradually moving towards, the coastal areas, and that has made some of us in Ghana be on edge because we are largely untouched by the terrorism scourge, but considering how they are becoming emboldened by the day, definitely is a matter of concern to many.
Okay, Adib, quickly now, looking at the strained relations going on between the international community, the United Nations, with France, and a whole lot of things. We know that earlier on recently that the economic sanctions were lifted off from Mali, and this is because they agreed to a 24-month transition to civilian rule. Now, with the actions of the military junta, do you think that they will still live up to their words of this bargain?
Okay, so when the sanctions were, I remember the one of the first extraordinary summits held in Accra to discuss the Malian issue. I was at the VIP launch of the Kotoka International Airport. I was one of those experts invited to be part of the whole event and welcoming the dignitaries and other leaders from across the sub-region. I have been very much part and parcel of the project. In fact, I have attended almost every ECOWAS Extraordinary Summit to discuss the issue. And my organization issued a number of press releases condemning, in no uncertain terms, the imposition of sanctions on Mali and other countries, because our biggest worry had to do with the fact that already these countries are finding it difficult to deal with the bread and butter issues. Mm-hmm. So when you add sanctions to it, it emboldens the, terrorists, and that might not just be cataclysmic to these individual countries, but the wider West African sub-region, as a whole. We do know that sanctions doesn't just affect the sanctioned, it affects the sanctioner, like we are even seeing with, the Russian-Ukraine issue. Some of the sanctions really affected a lot of, countries within the sub-region, which relied heavily on beef importations from beef exports from Mali. And so we were happy that the sanctions were lifted, very, very happy. And we are hoping that going forward would result to other, means of getting them to agree to some of these demands rather than sanctions. And at the beginning, I've always, when you check on Google, you see the comments I passed. ECOWAS, in an attempt to reassert their authority, were overly expectant. I think their demands were not feasible. They were impractical and unsustainable. Because the solution to what is happening in Mali is not necessarily election, because we have different types of elections. Do we want a free, fair, credible election, or we just run an election. Because if you have an election without building the democratic institutions, civil society, harnessing multi-party democracy, ensuring freedom of expression, it amounts to nothing. It amounts to a complete waste of time. That is why I felt that ECOWAS was being too much in a haste, and there was the need for us to take things step by step. Now, ECOWAS has come to the realization that, hey, the sanctions regime is not the way to go, and finally have agreed to a proposal by the Malians in the first place to a 2024 timeline. And I think it's okay. By that time, we should have been able to establish the right protocols and institutional capacity on the ground to be able to bring back the country, back on track. So for me, I am very hopeful that things would change.
Thank you very much for your contribution and insights to the program. Adib Saani, security analyst and executive director, Jatikay Center for Human Security and Peace Building, based in Accra, Ghana. Thanks for your contribution to the program. You're watching The Conversation on News Central Television. We'll go on a quick break, and when we come back, we will be analyzing the situation in Uganda, where 25 people were arrested after cost of living protest in Ginger. We'll bring you the details of this and more when we return.